Victor Popov here from ATS. I'm here to give you a brief rundown on simulated altitude training. ATS is a provider of simulated altitude training equipment. Altitude training in sport is something that has been known to be effective for many, many years. Ever since the Mexico Olympics, when sports performances were first affected by altitude or taken notice of, Russians and East Germans have worked on altitude training programs. Other countries and other athletes from all over the world have also jumped on this. Training at altitude has definitely been shown to improve sports performance. Traditionally, going to places like Flagstaff, to Mexico, the Ural Mountains, South Africa, has been necessary to achieve the ability to train at altitude. With simulated altitude training environments, you can do the same thing in your own home state, in your own home country, without the expense of going to an altitude venue. Teams spend hundreds of thousands of dollars going to altitude training camps. If you utilise existing ATS facilities, you can save an enormous amount of capital by not having to send teams to altitude to train, but by achieving the training in your home environment. It's an extremely cost-effective way of getting exposure to what is a proven method of performance enhancement. Altitude training has been something that sports people have been aware of since the Mexico Olympics. Performances went up or down, and it was determined that the altitude was what made the difference. Ever since then, countries like East Germany and Russia put a lot of emphasis on altitude training. And now, places like Flagstaff, Mexico, South Africa, individuals and teams head to these places to train at altitude because it's known to give a positive effect on sports performance. There was a stat out of the Athens Olympics that 85% of all medalists had altitude training as part of their preparation. Through ATS and our affiliates like TBC Conditioning here in Sydney, we can offer altitude training in your home environment. Critically, what you can do is integrate altitude training into your regular training programming. For a sports team, it's fantastic to keep rehab players fit. It's also great for developing acid-base buffering tolerances and aerobic performance in your athletes, if that's an important part of your sport. Certainly the research being done around the world at the moment indicates that training at altitude is definitely beneficial for performance. There's plenty out there if you want to read it, and you can look at the various websites that are available. Certainly for us, TBC Conditioning provides a very tidy and complete environment for altitude training. The staff here are trained to help write your programs and integrate them into your existing programming. Sports performance, weight loss and acclimatisation are all things that can be helped by this form of training. How does altitude training help you? There's a lot of information to show that exposure to an altitude environment stimulates certain processes that improve your ability to tolerate lactic acid and improve your aerobic performance. As I mentioned before, there's plenty of research out there to read about it. What's key is that integrating altitude training into your existing fitness program is the way to get the best result. Trainers that have been educated by ATS and that are available at these gyms that I mentioned will help integrate altitude training into your existing training program. It's something that is accessible to the public, it's safe, and of course you'll have a progression from the beginning to the end of your program, and you can assess how you've gone with that. Most different types of ergometers are available. Bikes, treadmills, rowing ergometers are all available to do training on. And again, it's really a matter of finding out what you want to achieve from your altitude training program and rolling it over throughout the course of your preparation. What is simulated altitude training? If you go up to a real altitude environment, you actually have less oxygen available in the atmosphere, and that's termed hypoxia. By stimulating your body to hypoxia, your body has a cascade of responses, and that cascade of responses includes things that improve sports performance. A simulated altitude environment creates a hypoxic or low oxygen environment in the chamber that you're working in, or with the mask system if that's what you're going to use. This hypoxia is a very powerful stimulus on the body's physiology. It's been known to have effects on acid-base buffering, on aerobic performance, and on performance in sport generally. The key benefits of altitude training for sport are its ability ability to help your body buffer lactic acid or work in high ADP environments. Also the ability to improve your oxygen extraction and delivery. That's what sports performance is about. And the improvements from altitude training are well documented. There's research on acid-base buffering, there's research on aerobic changes, and there's research, importantly, on performance changes. Because that's what it's all about. It's all about training the best possible way to improve your end performance. Simulated altitude training affords a very simple, effective and affordable way of adding this tool to your training kit. For individuals, it's something that sports people around the world pay a lot of money to go and do. It's quite expensive to fly and spend time at altitude. You can integrate altitude training into your own program by using the ATS affiliated centres. It's something that you should consider if you have a particular goal in mind, or if generally you want to maximise the outcome of your training. If you're spending any time at all in a gym, on a bike, on a treadmill, on a rower, that time will be spent much more efficiently and valuably if you're doing it in an altitude environment. For teams, it might be as simple as sending your rehab players there to keep their fitness up and keep their weight down while they're injured. For individuals, it might be a specific program planned at an event, Noosa Triathlon for example, Sydney Marathon, where an altitude training program will help you achieve optimum performance at that event. It's also possible just to integrate altitude training as a time-efficient method of exposure to exercise. Again, research has shown that exposure and training at altitude is up to a 25% greater stress on your body than training at sea level for the same amount of time. So, if you're looking at being time efficient with your training, any sort of aerobic workout on any sort of ergometer is more efficiently done at altitude because you get a better outcome. So they're the key points behind the use of altitude training. How to achieve that involves contacting the ATS affiliated centres, organising an assessment, sometimes organising a medical assessment if you have any risk factors that may be involved, and getting your training program started.